Hello and welcome to NewPod. 3 tabs are open. 2 people close to you have already shared their opinion. Yet the decision still feels just as hard. The evening wears on. You read the same message again. Then you put down the phone without replying. Welcome to this episode about imperfect choices. Those moments when no option feels completely reassuring. And when looking for one more piece of information only delays the choice. We will see how to move forward without demanding a certainty that does not exist.
Right. Imagine a job offer. It brings something valuable, but accepting it also means giving up another benefit. You read the message again. You make a list. Then a second one. You ask for advice. Then you ask someone what they think of that advice. The problem is not necessarily a lack of thought. Sometimes it is the hope that one option will become perfect, as if sound reasoning should remove every sacrifice.
Exactly. And that hope is understandable. Making a decision means accepting that part of reality is beyond our control. It does not mean choosing carelessly, nor does it mean giving up on reflection. It means recognizing that uncertainty cannot always be eliminated. One option often leaves behind an advantage offered by the other. So the goal is not to predict everything. It is to choose with enough clarity to move forward, and enough flexibility to adapt afterward.
Not all decisions are alike. Some have an answer that can be verified. A specific piece of information can settle the matter. We can check a requirement, compare a fact, confirm availability. The answer exists outside us. It can be verified. In that case, looking for more information makes sense. It directly answers the question. Once found, it truly changes the comparison or rules out an option.
But other choices have no clear answer. They combine values, preferences, risks, and incomplete information. 2 options can both be reasonable for different reasons. One protects stability. The other opens a new possibility. A disagreement does not always come from an error. It can come from priorities that carry different weight. No single fact can decide what matters most.
Take moving to a new home. One place may offer more space. Another may preserve important routines. Travel time, quiet, or being close to certain people may matter differently in each situation. No chart can automatically turn those preferences into a universal truth. Facts shed light on the choice. They do not always decide for us. A personal trade-off remains, and that trade-off can be thoughtful without producing complete certainty. Wait, this does not mean we should stop gathering information as soon as a choice becomes uncomfortable. A missing fact can change the decision. It may reveal a constraint, or show that an option we had dismissed is still possible. We simply need to examine what we expect from that information. Better understanding, a verifiable consequence, or the impossible promise that we will never be wrong. Those are not the same searches.
That is the key distinction. Useful research reduces a specific uncertainty. For example, it checks a concrete consequence. It starts with a clear question, and we know what the answer will change. Research that goes in circles keeps rephrasing the same worry. We keep looking, then we postpone. The same arguments return in different words. The amount of information grows, but the choice does not become clearer. The discomfort remains unchanged.
And postponing can bring temporary relief. As long as nothing is decided, no loss has become final. No option has been abandoned. In our imagination, they all remain available. That pause is human. We can acknowledge it without guilt. But it also has a cost. The decision stays open. It keeps taking up our attention. It returns while we work or when we try to sleep. And sometimes the deadline decides for us.
To break this cycle, first ask what kind of choice this is. Is it reversible? Or will it be hard to change? This distinction does not remove hesitation. It helps us adjust how much thought the decision deserves. A changeable choice allows more experimentation. A high-impact choice requires more preparation. We do not need to treat every decision as if it determined our entire future. We can save our deepest attention for the choices that truly require it.
A reversible option can often be tested on a small scale. We can try a routine for a limited time. Explore an activity without changing everything, or begin with one small step. Then we observe what works in real daily life, not only in an imagined scenario. A test does not guarantee the final outcome. It provides concrete experience. That experience can replace some assumptions. It may reveal a problem we can adjust, or a benefit that thinking alone did not uncover.
Yes, the word test matters. This is not about secretly committing while pretending to remain undecided. We need to define what we are trying, what we will observe, and what will lead us to continue, adjust, or stop. The possibility of going back must remain real. Otherwise, it is no longer a true test. Starting small makes the choice easier to understand. It turns one large abstract question into a few observations we can make. Some decisions are harder to correct. They deserve more attention. Not endless rumination, but structured attention. It can help to put our thoughts on paper instead of keeping everything in our head. We can examine the likely consequences, the available resources, and the people affected. These 3 reference points bring our thinking back to reality. They prevent every fear and every desire from arriving at once.
First, the likely consequences. The word likely avoids 2 traps: imagining only ideal success, or experiencing the worst outcome as if it were certain. We look at what could reasonably follow the choice in the short term, then over the foreseeable future, using the information available today, without pretending to know everything that will happen. This humility does not weaken the decision. It gives it a more honest foundation.
Next, resources. These may include time, energy, skills, room to adapt, or available support. We should consider the resources we truly have, not those we hope to suddenly gain once the choice is made. An appealing option may require resources that are not available now. Another may seem less exciting, but be more sustainable in the current situation. The most attractive choice is not always the easiest one to live with every day.
Then consider the people affected. Some decisions are deeply personal. Others have shared effects. A partner, family, team, or someone who depends directly on the chosen arrangement may be involved. Identifying them helps avoid 2 extremes: deciding as if no one else existed, or letting every outside opinion take control. Effects on others matter. Helpful conversations matter too. But responsibility for the decision does not disappear into a collection of opinions.
Now for a simple method. 1 sheet of paper is enough. On the first line, write the main goal. Just 1 goal. Not everything an ideal life should contain. This goal applies to the present decision. It gives direction, not an absolute promise. Keep the sentence simple. Protect my balance. Reduce a constraint. Or move toward an important priority. If several goals appear, choose the one that should guide this specific trade-off.
I like this idea of 1 main goal. When several desires become mixed together, we sometimes compare options that do not meet the same need. We ask one decision to solve too many things. Naming the direction does not make the choice automatic, but it reveals detours. An option may be appealing while doing little for the chosen goal. Another may seem less impressive but meet the current need more directly. The difference finally becomes visible. The second step is to write down 3 criteria that truly matter. 3, not an endless collection. This limit forces us to set priorities. It does not suggest that everything else has no value. Use concrete criteria. For example, compatibility with available resources, consequences for the people affected, and alignment with a core value. The details naturally depend on the decision. Each criterion should help distinguish the options, not merely provide a reassuring phrase.
The word truly matters here. Some criteria are added because they sound serious, others because they reassure the people around us. We may also adopt someone else's priorities without noticing. But if those criteria barely matter when we choose, they blur the comparison. 3 honest guideposts are better than a long decorative list. They may be imperfect. Above all, they should be sincere and relevant to the situation.
Third step, write down the possible options. Not only the 2 choices already occupying your thoughts. A variation or an intermediate step may exist. Include the option of changing nothing for now, if it is truly available. Doing nothing is not always neutral. It may have benefits. It may also have consequences. Putting it on paper lets us compare it instead of leaving it invisible. Then we stop confusing it with the absence of a decision.
We can now examine each option through the 3 criteria. We are not looking for a magic score. The goal is not to create artificial precision. A highly specific rating does not turn a preference into a fact. Instead, we make the tensions visible. This option protects one criterion but weakens another. That one requires more resources but fits the goal better. We can name the contradictions. And a named contradiction is often less overwhelming than a vague discomfort. One often uncomfortable step remains. Set a decision date. That date is not a punishment. It places a boundary around the search. It can reflect a real deadline and the time needed to obtain relevant information. Until then, gather only the truly useful elements. Do not reopen the whole question with every new worry. On that date, choose with what is available. Even if a little doubt remains, the framework protects your attention without forcing certainty.
Exactly. Without a date, Each new piece of information may call for another. An article leads to a comparison. Then that comparison opens a new possibility. With a date, the question becomes more precise. What do I truly need before deciding? We can even list the information we are waiting for and explain how each item will affect the choice. This keeps us from confusing useful investigation with an attempt to soothe every worry. No amount of data can promise lasting peace of mind.
Next, identify 3 scenarios for each option: the best, the worst, and the most likely. Write them separately in simple sentences. The best scenario shows what we hope for. The worst reveals what we fear. The most likely brings us back to a more balanced estimate. This exercise makes room for both hope and fear without letting either one fill the whole page.
The common trap involves the worst-case scenario. A worrying possibility quickly takes over. It almost becomes a forecast. The body may even react as if that outcome were already unfolding. But imagining a risk does not make it certain. Writing it down is useful. It lets us examine it more clearly. Treating it as a future already written distorts the comparison. Keep it in the right category. A possibility to examine, not a verdict. We can also examine our resources in the face of that worst-case scenario. If a difficulty arose, what room would we have? Who would be affected? What could be adjusted? A painful consequence is not necessarily irreversible. Conversely, a rare risk may deserve great attention if its effects would be extremely hard to handle. The goal is not to control everything. It is to see whether the risk is bearable and whether a response exists. This nuance makes the review more concrete.
The best-case scenario deserves the same realism. A favorable outcome is not guaranteed either. It helps us recognize what an option makes possible. We can consider the conditions that would support it without turning it into a promise. Between the two, the most likely scenario serves as an anchor. It often looks like a mixed result: benefits, difficulties, and adjustments. It is not certain. It is simply the most plausible reference point right now, based on what we know.
After this exercise, doubt may still be present. That does not prove the method failed. A decision can be thoughtful and still feel uncomfortable. It may involve a real sacrifice. It makes sense for that sacrifice to affect us. Total calm is not a required criterion. We can feel hesitant and still recognize a direction. Sometimes clarity is simply this: I understand what I am prioritizing. I see the possible cost of this choice, and I accept what I cannot control.
Asking for advice can also help. Another person may see an angle we missed. They may notice a consequence, reframe a dilemma, or separate a fact from a fear. To keep the conversation useful, share the goal, criteria, and options. The advice will then become more specific. But collecting opinions can recreate the same problem as collecting information. Each person speaks from their own preferences, values, and tolerance for risk. An outside opinion offers a point of view. It does not automatically become the right answer for the person making the decision.
Yes, the decision must remain connected to our own responsibilities and values. That does not mean deciding alone against everyone else. It means listening without giving up the place of the person who must live with the choice. Advice provides insight. It does not carry all the consequences.
There is, however, an essential limit. Some situations require professional expertise. Major medical decisions call for qualified advice. The same is true for major legal or financial decisions. A caring friend or relative can offer support. They cannot replace expertise suited to the subject.
And the exercise presented here remains a general psychological exercise. It helps organize everyday reflection. It does not provide a diagnosis. It cannot replace medical, legal, or financial analysis. In those areas, qualified information is one of the resources needed for a decision.
Let's recap. First, distinguish useful information from an impossible guarantee. Then consider whether the choice is reversible. Test it on a small scale when possible. For an important decision, examine the likely consequences, available resources, and people affected. Finally, write down the goal, 3 criteria, the options, and a date.
For each option, describe the best, worst, and most likely scenarios. Do not turn the worst into a certainty. Then listen to helpful advice. Connect the choice to your responsibilities and values. This process does not promise a perfect decision. It enables a more conscious decision with information that will always be limited.
One question is worth keeping close. Am I still looking for decisive information? Or am I mostly looking for the impossible guarantee that I will never regret my choice? The answer may be nuanced. It may also show that it is time to decide. Thank you for listening to NewPod. See you soon.